Today at Hidden Inca Tours, we're exploring Nazca in Peru. The elongated skull Paracas people were the first culture of the area from 800 BC to 100 AD, and they had natural dark red auburn hair. Their genetics were not typically Native American. They were also experts at brain surgery as far back as almost 3,000 years ago, with a very high success rate. This is an example of cranial trepanation or brain surgery. And the royal elongated skull people were buried in tombs such as this on a mountain called Cerro Colorado. Their god was called Kon. That's where we get Kon-Tiki, and he's usually depicted as having red hair. And sometimes he's even depicted as having blonde hair. And some of the skulls that have been found have both blonde hair and dark red hair. Now as we drive through Okukahe, which is one of the driest deserts in the world, we move slowly towards Nazca. This area gets 1/2 an inch of rainfall per year. You can see the bleak landscape. Far, far off in the distance are the Andes Mountains and the city of Cusco, the Inca capital. But here we're driving through desolate, desolate land where not even a cactus grows or a blade of grass. We even pass by a mysterious lost city that we explored on previous trips. And to save time, we're going through this tunnel. This saves us more than half an hour, and I'm not sure if the tunnel is modern or if it possibly goes back to Inca times, because we are driving on the ancient Inca road close to the desert, close to the coast of Peru. And as we continue on, again, quite a bleak landscape. This is granitic stone from volcanic activity millions of years ago. And down in the valley bottom, there is vegetation. In fact, agriculture that dates back thousands upon thousands of years. Our first stop along the road is to visit the Pulpit Area. And here we're going to see some geoglyphs that date back to the time of the ancient Paracas culture that preceded the Nazca culture. The Paracas created at least 1,000 geoglyphs in this general area, and we're going to have a look at some of them now from the top of this slightly rickety tower. So look very carefully on the side of this hill, and there you see what is called the Paracas family. Now as we go more slowly, you see this figure with very large eyeballs and spiky hair. And then as we keep going to the right, the Paracas family show up again, and they are very different in configuration and design as compared to the Nazca geoglyphs we're going to be looking at later. They're much more three-dimensional, and again, very numerous. More than 1,000 of them in this general area, which is in between Paracas and Nazca. And one last time, there you see a humanoid figure with hair sticking straight up. And then as we continue again to the right, there's the large eyeballs with spiky hair. And once again, the Paracas family. Humanoid looking, but some are almost looking humanoid/insect looking. Very enigmatic, not well understood whatsoever as to what specifically they represent. And as we drive along, again in a valley floor, we see vegetation, and in the background, that is the Nazca Plateau rising up. And now we're actually driving into the lines and geoglyphs of Nazca. Again, bleak landscape. The Nazca figures and lines cover hundreds of square miles and were made between 100 AD and 500 AD. So again, the Paracas were first, and then came the Nazca people. So now we get to see what the actual Nazca design system was made of. You can see just barely etched into the ground, only going down a few centimeters. They are cleaned on a somewhat regular basis, I've been told, in order to make sure they don't get covered by blowing sand. But they have been here in this area for 1,500 to 2,000 years. Those are what are called the hands, one with 4 fingers, one with 5 fingers. And then as we go farther up, the tower, looking down on the parking lot, and then you see to the right on the top, you see what looks like a hand. In fact, it's part of the shape of a serpent. This video simply there shows you the volcanic landscape in terms of the mountains, and then the raised ancient seabed, which is the flat surface. So as we look down on the tree of life, you can see again, just finely etched into the ground, there are what are called the hands, one with 4 fingers, one with 5 fingers, unknown reason why. Then some straight lines going way off into the distance. And then more detail of the tree of life, which is literally right next to the highway. And here's more detail of the tree of life. Can only be seen from the sky, which of course is quite curious. It's quite likely that the designer of it was standing on top of a multi-stage tower directing the workers to do the actual work on the ground. And here again you see that little hand shape on the right hand side. That in fact is one of the feet of a very long reptilian figure. There you see the back legs in the middle of the picture. And as we cross the highway, then you'll be able to see the tail in the middle, and then the hands of, or the tree of life in the foreground. But of course the best way to see Nazca is from the air. So we fly over some agriculture, which is in between the town of Nazca and the Nazca line and geoglyph system. Some actually quite rich agriculture in this portion of the area. And then we actually enter where the lines and the geoglyphs are. This is arid agriculture. And now we're actually flying over the figures. Here you see one of what is called the so-called runways. There are different so-called runways and trapezoids. Now, approaching the middle of the picture, you'll see the whale and a right angle. And now looking down, some more trapezoid shapes, the so-called runways. And also washed out areas. Sometimes there are flash floods that disturb the area, luckily not destroying too much of the Nazca line and geoglyph system. And now if you look very carefully, you will see the astronaut. He is on the side of a hill. And as the plane flies closer, there is the astronaut approaching, and now in the middle of the frame. And this is the monkey, which is in the middle of the frame shot now, as well as some geometric designs. And there's the dog in the middle, very small figure. Unfortunately, we were flying through some haze. And here's some more trapezoid shapes and other so-called runway shapes. And this is one of the famous hummingbirds. There are actually two. They're in the middle of the frame. The other one is in the Pulpit Area. And more so-called runways and geometric designs. There is the spider in the middle of the frame. And now more geometric designs, trapezoid figures, and the so-called condor, which you can see now in the middle of the frame. This is quite a giant figure. And then there's a kind of squiggly figure on the right, disappearing. Now we're seeing some car tracks, unfortunately damaged by idiots. Some more trapezoid shapes. And there you see another bird figure in the middle of the frame with quite a long zigzag neck, supposedly a flamingo. And then another abstract bird shape, actually two of them. And now as we look carefully, you'll see the parrot in the middle of the frame. It's very difficult to film and take pictures in a plane flying over Nazca because of the turbulence and reflection from the ground and all sorts of environmental factors. And now as we look down, you see the two hands in the middle of the frame, and now the tree of life, and there now is the reptile. Again, you can see half of it is on the right side, half of it's on the left side. The highway cuts it in half. This was the Royal Inca Road, so it may have actually been cut in half during Inca times. And so finally we're flying over the last of our flight. It was only a half-hour flight. It's actually much better to fly from the town of Paracas, which is a 2-hour flight, or from Ica, which is a 1.5-hour flight. And looking down upon the outskirts of Nazca itself, we're coming in for a landing. And here we are, back on the ground. I look forward to flying over Nazca once again in June of 2019. We also decided to visit a ceramic shop where this gentleman makes exact replicas of ancient Nazca pieces. Based on his observations and study, and also that of his father-in-law. These are authentic Nazca pieces from 1,500 to 2,000 years ago, including the mummified head of a baby Paracas with an elongated skull and red hair. And now he's showing us the various techniques that he's been able to recreate from the study of ancient Nazca pieces. Almost all the Nazca pieces have a rounded bottom like that, so they do find their center. And we see his tools and some ancient pieces. And now the drawings depict the different mythological characters of the Nazca, many of which are based upon older Paracas characters, such as Khan, the flying redhead god. And here he's handing out some original pieces for people to study. Again, thousands, if not millions, of these artifacts have been found in the area. Now he's showing the technique of how to make one of the pots. The Nazca and the Paracas, in fact, had the concept of the potter's wheel. And now he's going to show you the process of burnishing, which is polishing them. Only one firing was done, and the temperature would be about 900 degrees centigrade. So here he is with the semi-precious stone, burnishing the pigment into the clay itself before it's totally dry. And that's why only one firing is done and not two, which is the conventional way that pottery is done in other parts of the world. Now we're at the Puquillos of Cantayuc. This is in the Nazca area, and these are Nazca or possibly even Paracas wells that were created going down to streams and rivers underground that come from the Andes Mountains. These, of course, have been restored. There are approximately 20 of them. In ancient times, like 2,000 plus years ago, there were hundreds, if not thousands of them, because there's basically no or little surface water in the Nazca area. Almost all the water runs underground. And then this shows you how ergonomic and gentle the slope is that goes down to the center of one of these Puquillo wells. Some of them are clockwise and some are counterclockwise in nature. The reason for that I still have not been able to figure out. But the amazing thing is that they're still operating, still accessible, after 2,000 plus years. And the rounded stones used there to reinforce the wall are from the local Nazca River, which runs seasonally. Most of the year it's completely dry, but when there are flash floods, it actually does operate as a major river of the area. And finally, we're visiting the Maria Reich Museum. Maria Reich was a German mathematician who studied the Nazca area for 50 years, up until her death at the age of 95. And her museum is quite small, but it shows things such as Nazca burial procedures. This is her timeline of all of the work that she did and all of the credit she got from universities and governments. And here she is greeting dignitaries. And then photographs of her in the field. Again, she worked in the Nazca area, I think, until she was 94 plus years old, and was buried right here on location. This was her house and her laboratory during those 50 years of study in the Nazca area. Some of the first photographs were taken by her from Air Force planes of the Peruvian Air Force. And lastly, we're going into this little side museum at the Maria Reich Museum, where there are reproductions of some of the Nazca pottery, a few examples of original works, and then this amazing mummy of a Nazca sorceress. She actually does not have black hair. She has very dark red auburn hair, so she could be descended from the Paracas people. And she has lots of tattoos, mainly of birds and foxes or puma. So, thank you so much for watching, and these are Nazca Paracas tours for 2019. In August of 2019, we have our annual Elongated Skulls tour of Peru. And then in November, Lost Ancient Technology and Serpentine Mysteries tour of Peru and Bolivia. And these are books of mine on Amazon that you can get in both ebook and paperback format. Nazca, Decoding the Riddle of the Lines, where I look at all of the different theories of how they were made. Elongated Skulls of Peru and Bolivia, The Path of Viracocha, which is about all the elongated skull cultures of the area. And finally, Beyond the Black Sea, The Mysterious Paracas of Peru. Their genetics are not that, in general, of Native American people. They seem to have migrated from a different part of the world 3,000 plus years ago.